This is the Trane XR80 furnace in my basement. I went to fire it up the other day to take the chill off the air, but instead of heat, all I got was about 15 seconds of a fairly loud grinding noise before the unit shut itself off. Now, the only thing I know about HVAC is that service calls can be pretty expensive, so I decided to go online to see if this was a problem that I could deal with myself. After a brief search, I discovered a sequence of operations list for gas furnaces. This seemed to implicate the draft inducer blower as the culprit. This is pretty much the only thing running during that early stage of the startup process that would be capable of generating that kind of noise. So I decided I'd take a look under the hood. But first, in the name of safety, I turned off the furnace power switch. And although it's redundant, I also made certain that the thermostat was set to the off position. With this unit, there are two access panels that need to be removed. That's accomplished by first rotating the latches on the lower panel 90 degrees in an outward direction. The panel can then be tilted forward and lifted out. At this point, the upper panel is just a friction fit and can be pulled straight off. This is the draft inducer blower. Actually, this is the new replacement unit already installed. When this issue came up, I was so focused on the task at hand, it didn't even occur to me to record the process. But I need to remove the draft inducer again, because at the time of the first installation, I didn't have the replacement gasket that goes between the inducer and the furnace on hand. To remove the inducer, I started by disconnecting the wiring harness. With this model, there are tabs that need to be squeezed to release the connector. The fittings were keyed, so there's no concern about making an improper reconnection. Next, I removed the 5 sheet metal screws that mount the draft inducer blower to the furnace. There's not a tremendous amount of room to operate a ratchet wrench when working close to the furnace. I found a foot-long ratchet extender makes the process much easier. Finally, I separated the draft inducer blower from the flue. This was just a friction fit on my setup, and the draft inducer blower slid off pretty easily. This is the old inducer, and as soon as it was removed, it became fairly obvious why it wasn't working. Rust. Lots of rust. The fins, for lack of a better term, of the blower wheel were virtually non-existent. This is a collection of rusted metal that I shook out of the draft inducer after it was removed. Installation of the new draft inducer blower was essentially a reversal of the removal process, the exception being replacement of the gasket. I removed what little was left of the old gasket from the furnace. When properly positioned, I noticed that the gasket extended beyond the body of the blower in several places, so I decided to apply small pieces of painter's tape to these areas to hold the gasket in place while the new blower was installed. When installing the new unit, it was a bit of a challenge to connect it to the flue, line up the holes, and get the first screw started. A magnetic socket insert to actually keep the screw in the socket would have been helpful. Either that or a second pair of hands. With the screws snug, all that remained was to remove the tape, reconnect the wiring harness, replace the access panels, restore power, and then bask in the heat.